Hello and welcome to Qsports. I am Mudu Gajaga and thank you for joining us. Coming up this morning, we're going to talk about the Gambia Football Federation plan to professionalize the Gambia's league. How is it possible? What do they need to make it a possibility? Do we in fact have the football pitches to be able to start a professional league? That's a question that we're going to program. There has been a stakeholders dialogue yesterday where the stakeholders came together to discuss the possibility of making this a reality. We'll also be looking at the Gambia's recent international friendlies against Uganda, the latest, but previously they also played against Equatorial Guinea, where they won by 2-1. We'll be looking at a Gambian footballer who recently signed a professional contract with Slavia Praha in the Czech top division league, Yusufa Sanyang. What are some of his prospects and what sort of a deal is it? And looking at the player, his rapid transition from the Senegalese league, first of course in the Gambian league and then to the Senegalese league, and now in Sweden, then to Czech Republic. We'll also be looking at our neighbors, Senegal. They shocked the world of football, if you like, but not many of us who were shocked when they humbled England by 3-1 in a friendly at the Nottingham City Stadium. We'll be looking at all those stories, but first, let me welcome my guest, Sethi Jan. It's always a pleasure to have you, journalist. Welcome to the studio.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gajaga. It's always a pleasure to be on your platform, and it's home to me. And of course, good morning to all our listeners and viewers, for that matter. I'm very much used to the radio, so I always address my audience as listeners. But of course, we have viewers here.
Yes, just to remind you, in the second half of the show, I'll be having freelance journalist Lamin Jara to talk about the West Coast Region Third Division playoff. Also, a very interesting teams, matches there as well later in the show. But first, let's start with the Gambia Football Federation held a day-long convergence of football stakeholders to discuss professionalization of the country's football league to raise the standards of the game and so to attract sponsors and create more opportunities for player development. Well, I covered this event. I was there also as a participant. It happened on Wednesday. First, let's look at this story. Football dialogue of stakeholders. The country's most popular sport, many players, even the top league, are not professionals. With a view to set the ball rolling to develop Gambian football, the Gambia Football Federation, GFF, with their consultant on the plan to professionalize the league, engaged football's key players, including team owners, representatives of businesses, players, administrators, and the media to develop a business model to bring about a professional football league. Professor Mustafa Fane is the consultant for the business model to professionalize the league in 2026.
What is important here is about ownership. This is our country. We all love sports. We all watch sports. So I think having this is really good for all of us. It will bring a lot of benefits to the Gambia. The costs are high, but unless and until we strategize, we know where we want to get to. We never get to the destination.
The professionalization of the Gambian League is expected to attract sponsorship, improve talent development, player marketing, and create a decent wage for players, coaches, and provide a return on investment for the sponsorship through TV broadcast of matches and other revenue streams. Lamin Kababajo, president of the Gambia Football Federation, says having a professional league will transform the country's football for the better.
The creation of a professional football league in the country will not only raise the standard of football in the country, or accrue financial benefits to investors, players, officials, and by extension the larger football community, but it will undoubtedly complement the government's program of creating more jobs to a good number of youths.
Several football stakeholders attended the convergence to discuss ways to transform Gambian football by making it an attractive brand. Among those present was Bakari Waibaji, the Minister of Youth and Sports. To have a professional football league, government plays a key role in making it a reality. He gave assurances that government will support the drive to professionalize the league.
On our part, as a ministry and as a government, we do affirm our full commitment to, among other things, push for the establishment of the National Sports Development Fund. This has already been captured in our National Sports Bill that will be tabled before the National Assembly in its next session. Upgrade and build new sports facilities in strategic areas across the country, promote gender equity and professional football.
Football stakeholders such as administrators, former players, and those running clubs welcomed the forum, saying it is good to start the process towards the goal of having a professional league. Amadou Jaite, Secretary General of First Division side BST Galaxy FC, Mamadou Cisse, a former national team player, and Idi Sala, Assistant Head of Recruitment at Portsmouth FC in England, spoke highly of the project.
You can see our players traveling to Senegal to play their professional league. Our players are playing in the Gambia here. Some earning is a problem for them. So this is a very, very good initiative.
Yeah, the thing is, if we start to look at what is not available and what is available, then we will still be waiting for such things to happen for the professional league to start going.
I think it's really a good thing it's happening, but it's going to be like a massive jump from amateur to professional, because it might be with so many factors that we haven't got so many things to start with, but at the end of the day you've got to start somewhere.
Having a professional football league will require a lot of improvement in football infrastructure, structures of clubs, players' wages, and private sector investment in terms of sponsorship and TV broadcasting. Despite the current realities, it appears something is starting, which could transform the lives of those playing the nation's favorite sport. Yes, professional league in the Gambia. That's the plan. So it's the business model aspect of it that is being discussed by a consultant there at the workshop that I attended. Satijan, this is a long-time dream of the Gambia Football Federation. It's been talked about a few years ago. You were part of events where it's been discussed. Now that they've taken the first step, the first action of looking at the business aspect of it, even taking a consultant who is going to work on that, currently have started work on it. What's your overview of Gambia targeting to get the league to a professional level as close as 2026?
Yes, I think if you look at it, if my memory serves me well, I think Kaba's first term in office with his executive, that was one of the main agendas that they put forward to stakeholders, if I can remember very well. And I think it was projected to start somewhere around 2024. And of course, some of the basic things were not in place, but it seems this time around they are very much determined to it. And it's important to little bit dig about the past of Gambian football administration setup to understand where are we and what are we doing. First, I think football holistically was just seen as a social event by a lot of people, and a lot of people invested in it not to gain something in return, but it was just a fun fair. It was a social activity that was loved by a lot of people. And if you look at the emergence of Real de Banjul and of course Walidan in the 60s, it took a different dimension, because for Walidan they had a patron in Alhaji Obi Konate who was ready to spend a lot of money, his money from his own business, in order for the club to compete. He was not looking at what I can get from football and all. And if you look at Real, they had, of course, a whole lot of patrons that were challenging with Alhaji Obi Konate. It went up to a time whereby you have institutions starting to come up with teams. It's, of course, backed by government. It started in 1974 with Gambia Ports Authority, when Mas Aksigai, who later became one of the coaches of the national team, who was an accountant at Gambia Ports Authority, started the project. They had to take a lot of players from Real de Banjul, started it, and from there we've seen Ports faded away. When it faded away, when this Yaya Jammeh regime came around 1996 with Yankuba Toure, who was, of course, a huge sport enthusiast, decided to take Falcons from Banjul, Tobacco Road, Banjul North, and then reintegrate it to become the next second phase of Gambia Ports Authority. And then it played in the 3rd division, came up in the 4th division, and then from there we saw Armed Forces came up, we saw Interior came up. These are all institutionalized back teams. And then when these teams started emanating, they started taking it to another level. So some of the traditional teams were unable to compete with them because they were paying money. So although it was not professional, but to a large extent these teams were paying their players the entire year. So it took them to another level. So at that point of time, it could have been taken to another level because with a government-backed project, these clubs could have been professional clubs as at now. But at one point of time, it stopped. And then you had Real de Banjul came up with, of course, Willie Abraham, who was initially a fan, Bakary Jame, who was initially a fan. They took over the reins. Ibn Dur did a pretty good job with Real de Banjul, but these people took over the reins and said, we're going to compete with these institutional teams. The only way we can do it is to try to reach for professional levels. And Real started, had a big project, had a big dream. Many people didn't believe it, but as at now, Real can compete with some of the top clubs when it comes to professional standards. They are the model sample, and then we started having other clubs following the lead of Real de Banjul. And then they started, of course, capping up the dominance of the others. You look at Fortune with Asandur coming up, you look at a whole lot of other clubs, then the institutional clubs started to fade away because these clubs boosted up and were more organized. And then at one point of time, government started saying, why should we continue spending on football? Why? And when a lot is not being generated by us. I can fully remember it was a discussion at the National Assembly when, of course, directors of Gambia Port Authorities, directors of Gamtel were being questioned. What are the returns of these clubs? They were not able to put a lot in the table because these institutions were just supporting the club. The club were not independent, or it was not modeled in a business sample so that they could become independent. That's where I think these institutional clubs failed, in as much as they've done a lot for Gambian football. If you look at Gamtel, their dominance, how they did very well in the WAFU club competitions, Confederation Cup with Tafa Mane, it was government's money that was backing it. Gambia Ports Authority with Alaji Sar, but the elevation to another level whereby these clubs became self-sustaining wasn't there. Now you have the Real de Banjuls, you have the Fortunes, you have the TMTs, and others have taken it to another level. Are we going to stop there and say, let's just continue this way? Because the most important prospect here is the player. We have a lot of players, we have a lot of, what we have in abundance is the talent. So in order to nurture the talent, we cannot just be sitting there and say, we don't have the pitches, we don't have that. Fine, it's a factor, but we have to start from somewhere, because when Ports Authority was starting it in 1974, nobody thought that there was going to be Gamtel, there was going to be Gambia Armed Forces that would go take it to another level. So we have to start from somewhere, and from that somewhere, we build it to the next level. And I believe with the business initiative that is being put in place, because I made some personal research about it and I talked to some stakeholders, what Federation realized is that they have the technical expertise, but they don't have the business expertise. That is why they get the consultant. And they must involve government, because I understand when they talk to the Senegalese authorities, what the Senegalese professional league told government is that, told the federation is that, if you should start, you have to have the backing of government. If you start it on your own, it's going to be very difficult, because I personally, I can remember talking to Sersek somewhere in 2015 when Gambia and Senegal were having a test game here, local-based test game. And I asked him, how did they manage to start the professional league? Sersek is the president of Jambar and president of League Football Professional of Senegal. He said, it was very difficult for us, but we said we have to start. Come what may, we had to start. He said they are still facing challenges, but they needed to start. So Gambia, this is where we are. We need to start. But with the involvement of government, because what I understand is they want government to classify football as a special investment zone. Because if they classify it as a special investment zone, football investors would have tax waivers. If they have tax waivers, then it will take some time so that they can invest their monies, generate something, and then build up a business, because all special investment zones are having tax waivers. So if government is able to do that with, of course, pitches and all, we would be there. But it's a welcome initiative. People can have their reservations, but as Mamadou Cissé Ziko said, if you look at the things that we have and the things we don't have, we will never start something. I think we have to start something and improve it. The pitches are an issue, that is a hard fact, but if you look at Birkama Mini Stadium, nobody can tell me it is not a standard mini stadium. If you look at, although there are some improvements that needs to be made, if the Independence Stadium is up and ready, somebody can use it. If Serekunda is, of course, do some few things on their playing surface, if Banjul do something on their playing surface, if Serekunda West and all, we would be there. And if you look at, let's say, you can look at Gambinos. You
Yes.
can look at the Gambia Dutch Lions. You can look at Hawks. You can look at, of course, Real de Banjul. These are all clubs that have basically everything that, so most of the things that a professional club should have. And there are other clubs that are working on so many infrastructural developments. So we would be there. Even if you should start with 8 or 9 teams, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't start.
Those were some of the suggestions that came at the stakeholders conference. You have somebody representing Gambinos. He talked about Gibraltar as an example. He said the national league, it's a professional league, but where they started is basically one stadium, because that's the standard stadium that they have. So they will ensure that they play 2-3 matches a day at that stadium. They also made sure that, you know, it is well kept. Aside from that, the things that you talked about, you gave a little bit background as to the institutional teams, how they came, the unsustainability aspect of it. We all seen how Gambia Ports Authority has dwindled now in the second division.
Gamtel
completely fade away.
They sold it to Serekunda FC.
Yes.
Now it is Serekunda FC.
Now it is Serekunda FC.
Police is now stuck in the Banjul third division now.
Armed Forces is not doing well anymore.
Yes.
They're not competing for the league title. So that sustainability aspect of it, I think football as a business should be something that really needs to be encouraged. The likes of Fortune, the likes of Real de Banjul, they at least have a business model.
Sure.
They have a way of sustaining the club. Those are the kind of things that is needed. But if you look at our leagues also, say, we have the issue of teams being, let's say, community teams like Brikama United. Okay, let's say the likes of Steve Biko. I don't know whether you will consider it as a community team of Bakau, but also since the sale of certain players, also maybe they would also want to improve and you know, become a standard football club where they will have their own football feel and have some improvements. Well, Hawks has gone to a certain level now, developed their own pitch. You've talked about Gambia Dutch Lions, massive projects currently going on. Those are encouraging signs. But if you have the other half of the league also kind of really need to up their game, I think they're going to be bound to be some problems.
Yeah, I think that should be the challenge, because as a football entity, if you exist for 20, 25 years, not even football, any business entity should look at yourself and say, where am I going to? Am I only stuck at somewhere? Am I going backwards? Should I go forward? So all these clubs need to look at themselves in the mirror and say, let's move forward. So if there is no professional, if there is no standard that is put in place, all of the clubs will be content with where they are. So with these professional leagues, all the other clubs, Banjul United, Banjul, Steve Biko, all these community-based clubs, Serekunda United, will be like, what should we do in order to reach these heights of a professional league? And if there is a very prominent business model that is being put in place by the consultant, then these clubs will tap into this business model and then see where and how they can structure themselves to reach at this level. But something has to be put in place. If you look at Steve Biko, for example, recently they are the club that have sold the most prominent players. They have sold Lamin Owens, Lamin Silla Owens, fondly called Owens. They've sold Adam Obojang, Lamin Sedikan, high-profile players. But how much did they get from these players? Because Gambia is an amateur league. It's categorized by FIFA as level 4. So with level 4, you will not attract a lot of money, because, for example, Tegej FC, the amount of money they would get from Yusuf Asanyan, if he was playing for Fortune, they would not get it, because it's an amateur league. So all these things are things that we should look at. Are these clubs content of continuing as an amateur league, develop top talented players, sold them for peanuts compared to what Senegal can sold? So at the end of the day, that is why the Senegalese market footballing market is booming. So at the end of the day, we have to start from somewhere. We should not be sitting and say, we don't have this, we don't have that. Let's start from somewhere. And with all due respect to the critics, they have their opinions. But if you look at the recent development of Gambian football, whether it is infrastructural, whether it is the players. The other time the coach was saying, Jonathan McKinstry, before, most of our players would go to these clubs, spend 1 or 2 years to familiarize themselves with a professional standard. But most of them now, they move, and in the 4th year, they play for the team.
Yeah. So some of them, even through trials, they still find a way to get into this team.
That's a massive improvement, and clubs are doing extremely well. So what we need is this professional league. I'll make comparison with the national team. We did not have a CAF or FIFA approved stadium. But did we say we are not going to play football? We didn't. We find a solution. Found a solution, went to play in Senegal, continue to play in Morocco. And we qualified 1 AFCON, fail the next one. Of course, there are challenges, but if you look at our football, we can be critical, but we can say maybe we are at crossroads, but there are some few signs. So if we should continue playing this amateur league forever and ever, where and when can we move forward? We can always question the federation, whether they fail the stadium projects. We can question that. We can also score government, score local government. Why didn't they do much when it comes to infrastructure? We can always do that, but if the opportunity arises for us to move to another level, we should take it, because that is going to help you and me. Because imagine, most of the things that we do for this, for football, most of it is for free. But if it is a professional league, we would be paid better. Of course, the clubs would be, the medics would be paid better, the coaches would be paid better, the players would be paid better. So each and every one of us needs this. For example, I always say this, the journalists, most of the journalists have metamorphosed to football administrators, and most of these top clubs have been transformed by journalists to yearn for professional level. And most of them earn very little. Imagine if it is a professional league, what we would earn. Coaches, everybody would earn something bigger. So it's a welcome initiative, and this dialogue have brought everybody into one forum. Not everybody, most of the stakeholders in one forum. So everybody have had a say. So at the end of the day, you would be like, I was at the dialogue, maybe I had this and this initiative, even if it is not fully applied, but you had a say, and that is very welcome.
If you look at it also, as part of the discussions, government support, which is highly needed. You've already talked about some of the challenges. Pitch is a factor. You definitely have to have playable pitches to be able to start a professional league. But aside from that, how about government helping teams? Yes, we are not in Morocco, but government can also help support our first division league, maybe teams with subventions. Let's say for the first division, for instance, if the threshold for each first division team at least to have, let's say 5 million to be able to start the league, obviously government could support maybe halfway for all these first division teams, because I think it's high time we just not look at football. Oh, okay, they're just going to play for fun. Or football has completely gone beyond that.
True. Yeah, I think, well, with the commitment of government on different things, I personally think it will be extremely difficult for government to of course, amass a lot of money and say we're going to invest it in football. I think it's going to be difficult. But on the other way, when they, of course, try to help in infrastructures, particularly stadiums, that would be extremely important. But more importantly, tax waivers for those that are willing to invest in sports. Because the main reason why institutional teams struggle is because the authorities, their bigger bosses, started questioning them. The amount of money that you spent on football, what is the justification? That is why these clubs are struggling. That is the hard fact. Even if they don't come out in public to say that's the hard fact. So government have stopped that, but it can help in another way. If of course tax waivers are being given to let's say GSM companies, let's say banks. If you invest in football, if you sponsor a particular team or if you sponsor the league, you're going to have this particular waiver. They would of course definitely do it, because imagine the amount of interest that football gathers. There is no particular sport or no particular entity that gathers it here, whether it is the National League, whether it is the senior national team. Although the National League do not gather a lot of people going to stadium and watching, but just imagine what happened during the Ramadan 2021, 2022, 2023. If you have a professional league that is well organized, well standardized, imagine the number of people that would be going and watching. So it's a very, very, very crude, massive entertainment and sporting avenue that is there waiting to be tapped. So government really need to help, but with the consultant, I'm eager to see the document that he's providing. I think in 45 days he has to present it to the federation. But there are a lot of things that could be tapped, but definitely government have to help. But more importantly is infrastructure. Government have to be committed to that. And I always say this, we always call government, but we have to call local government bodies. Fine, some of them would argue that their budgets are not. But how much money do they spend on youth and sports? How much money they spend on development of course, sporting activities in their communities? And that's the biggest avenue. Nawetan, imagine, Nawetan is loved by everybody in every locality. How much money does local government spend on these on these sporting infrastructures. So if all these things come into effect, I believe we can start from somewhere, and I believe it is already a success, whether we start in 2026, 2027, 2028. But I think for the first time we have been very, very, let's say, keen, put our foot on the front pedal to say we want this.
Absolutely. Well, Setijan Gay talking about at least we need to start somewhere. So we are in that phase. It started with this dialogue, a business model has been developed, and let's see how it pans out. And the target is 2026, but it can go further, maybe 2027, for the actual realization of this professional league. But actually, something have to start somewhere. And in that process, now let's talk about the Gambia's international friendly. They played against Uganda not long ago, and the game ended 1-0. First, the match report before the reaction. The Uganda Cranes stunned the Scorpions, taking the lead with a sumptuous header in the 26th minute after a loss of possession in the Gambian midfield led to a corner kick. After a first dominant spell of possession, the Gambia lost control, with Uganda winning duels and possession and being faster in transition. Abdoulaye Mane was the only Gambian player close to scoring with posting run and dribble before hitting the post with a powerful shot. The Scorpions, however, made their opportunity count after a surging run, which led to a penalty after a Ugandan defender handled the ball in the box. Captain Alassana Mane scored to level it 1-1 for the Gambia, 1 minute before half-time. The Gambia had huge opportunity to take the lead immediately at the start of the second half with a free header, but missed twice in succession. Both sides created enough chances to win, but couldn't score in the second half. A 1-1 draw appeared to be a fair result. The Scorpions coach got his wish to try out several new players over the course of the two games. Well, the Gambia against Uganda, the Cranes, Uganda scored first, and then the Gambia got an equalizer. Both sides could have gone on to win the game, and this followed another international friendly that the Gambia played against Equatorial Guinea and won that one by 2-1. Well, sir, this is hugely important result for the Gambia. If you look at the first victory against Equatorial Guinea 2-1, this one a draw, counts for massive points in terms of global rankings as far as FIFA is concerned.
Yeah, personally, I think the coach took a huge risk in of course, omitting 12 players that are already established, and then bringing in 12 new players, as he alluded to in his press conference when he was unveiling the team. To me, it's a massive risk, because both you and I and everybody knows that there are a lot of deficiency in our play. So I thought that he was going to use this test game in order to, of course, correct some of the things that are of course, frailties in his game. Whether it is the back three, the traditional 4-3-3 that is favored by many. Sometimes he always used the 3-4-3 formation, but he thought otherwise, inviting a lot of players, and some of his critics have it that he has invited a whole lot of bunch of players. Well, maybe that is his own way. There are no perfect ways to something. The best way is the winning way. But if you look at it, well, he has been vindicated, because it has been a successful one, because all these teams are far ahead of us.
Ahead of us in terms of ranking. In fact, when I look at even Uganda, oh, massive difference in terms of
So you'll be like, where are we? Where are we? But that's the reality, because our ranking is a reality based on, of course, the coefficient and the points that FIFA gives to teams. And I think I've been massively impressed by some players, Alassana Mane, who was coming in and out of the team, and I think the fact that he was selected and others left was, to me, it was for the coach to tell him, this is your opportunity to show me what you got. I'm still not very much convinced, but he has shown real leadership quality. Another player that have really impressed me is Mohamedou Dramé. He's an absolutely gem of a midfield player, very comfortable on the ball, although it is very difficult to, of course, have a holistic view of someone on just 1 or 2 games, but he has really shown glimpses of how good he is. Another important player that have really impressed me is Abdoulaye Mane.
Abdoulaye Mane,
yeah,
fantastic in the first game against Equatorial Guinea.
Yeah, if you look at this player, he is a player that have a huge mental toughness and a player that does not only have talent but have belief. I can remember when he burst into the scenes here at the Independence Stadium when Walidan had a very, very bad first round. Come the second round, he was registered fresh from nowhere, from Tujereng, I believe, bossed the league, scored 7 goals, had 5 assists in the second round. And to me, he was my best player of the season because of the effect that he had. And then 2-3 seasons later, he left for Sweden. And if you look at how he's bossing the Swedish league, very fast pace, can change pace, and can play with both feet. Absolutely brilliant players. He's really impressed me. Another player that have impressed me is the Azam winger, Jibril Silla, has done fantastically well and all. And there are a whole lot of players that have done well, but and Sidibe,
yeah,
I think
Adama Sidibe,
he's massively underrated for me because when he burst into the scenes in his first game against Cecil, he scored. And then for whatever reason, the coach decided not to call him. I think for 3 or 4 windows, did not call him. He came back, scored 2 goals. I think explosive player, a very, very dynamic striker. I covered some of the games that he played here for Marimo FC and briefly with Gambia Ports Authority, and he continued with the same trend at St. Johnston. I believe, of course, the coach has been looking at other strikers, but 3 goals in his little number, I still believe he's still under 7 or 8 caps. Scoring 3 goals is massive, impressive tally. So these are some few players that have impressed me. Lion Jai also have done quite well. So overall, it's a very, very good window. Now the coach would be okay. I have already had 12 players that I believe have already earned their place in the team. There are others that are knocking on my door. How are you going to balance things? That is for the coach to decide. But to me, he could have, of course, given time to some of those players that have been playing along and correct some of the deficiencies that we have in our game. But it is his take and it is his call, and has been vindicated in terms of result. But overall, going into the future, how he is going to manage the young generation coming in, integrating them with the already established players, I think that is the biggest challenge.
Absolutely. When it comes to the national team, well, a lot of selection issues are going to come up because these past 2 friendlies have really shown that the youngsters and also the players who are part of the Gambia setup are really proving their worth. Let's look at another player who recently signed a contract, that is Yusufa Sanyang. Sir briefly talked about him, playing for Fortune, now for Tengage, and he just signed a contract with Slavia Praha. And this is a top team in the Czech league. Let's look at his story and then we'll have a little discussion on it. Yusufa Sanyang hails from Kungu Jang and started out playing football on dusty pitches. His never-ending dream of becoming a professional footballer has now taken him to one of Central Europe's most prestigious club, SK Slavia Praha in Czech Republic. The deal which sees Yusufa move from Ostes IF in the Swedish Allsvenska to SK Slavia Praha is reported to be for a fee of 3 million euros, which is a record transfer fee for Ostes IF. Yusufa shares his excitement as he prepares to embark on a new journey.
I feel excited. I'm happy, for signing here in Prague. I think it's a one step for me in my football career, and I'm really happy for the signing also. The first time my agent told me about okay, there are teams interested in you, and I think Slavia is pushing more for you to go. I tell him, I think I'm very excited for that because I'm playing in Oster, and I think Oster and Slavia is a little bit different.
Yusufa Sanyang, one of his youngsters, started off playing football here, played for first division clubs here in the Gambia before moving to Tengage in Senegal, Sweden, now Slavia Praha. And there is a Gambian involvement in this. Say, I know we don't have much time, but let's talk about Modulamin Biai, sports journalist, former, football agent now. So many Gambians has created the platform for them, the connections to get them to teams in Europe, and many of them have become successful.
Yeah, Yusufa is another success story of a ghetto youth that believed in himself, got the possibility, got the opportunity to prove his worth. And he could have been sold by Fortune, he could have been sold by, let's say, Walidan, a real demand. That's how good he is. But Tengage FC sold him, got a lot of money, and of course,
like you were saying,
still going back to professional league and all. And he has massive potential, very fast, tricky. You still have a lot of way to go, and I believe it is important that sometime you start through the lower ranks in order to move forward. Because if you jump from, let's say, straight from, let's say, a Central European league or a Scandinavian league straight to the Premier League or the French league, it might be a little bit difficult for you. And I believe he's on the right trajectory. And briefly speaking about BI, he's another example of hard work pays off. You and I know him as a colleague, as a journalist, started here with West Coast, and of course started managing online platforms, had the idea, started working with Real de Banjul, and have the belief that why can't I establish my own entity? And he managed to do that, and right now he's a top football agent, African agent, and I speak to him on my platforms, and I speak to him as a friend, and I don't see any reason why he can't be as big as Emeka Obasi of Nigeria, who is the agent of Bukayo Saka and others. He started a small entity, now he's very big, and I believe one day or the other he will be reaching the heights of Emeka Obasi because of his determination and his great work. He has put in a lot of effort, a lot of time, resources for his personal development, and Gambia is benefiting from it. I think the number of transfers he has facilitated for Gambian players is unprecedented. There is nobody that has reached the levels of BI as at now, and let's hope that he would be making those transfers, and very soon, hopefully, he will make a Premier League transfer or a La Liga transfer, why not to Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United, Real Madrid, because he can have the possibility to do that. All the best of luck to him.
Absolutely, without a doubt. Now, let's jump now to our neighbours. Senegal humbled England by 3-1 in an international friendly. First, the report, and then we'll have a little discussion on it. Senegal again proved their status as giants of African football by handing England their first ever defeat to an African country. The win also stretched unbeaten streak to 22 games, while England's loss, which included a disallowed late goal from Jude Bellingham for a handball in the build-up, was their first defeat in 4 games under new manager Thomas Tuchel. England, with 10 changes from Saturday's 1-0 tamed World Cup qualifying win over Andorra a few days before, took the lead when their captain Harry Kane struck in the 7th minute after Senegal goalkeeper Edouard Mendy saved Anthony Gordon's shot but spilled the ball into the striker's path. The host conceded for the first time under Tuchel when Ismail Assar caught Kyle Walker napping to poke in Nicholas Jackson's cross in the 40th minute. The visitors doubled their lead in the 62nd minute when Habib Diarra latched onto the ball over the top, then fired through goalkeeper Dean Henderson's legs for his 4th goal in 4 internationals. Sheikh Tijan Sabali then struck deep into stoppage time, prompting boos from England fans after the final whistle. Senegal's victory, watched by hundreds of their fans in the stadium and thousands more in fan parks back home, was thoroughly deserved. They peppered keeper Dean Henderson with 9 shots on target to England's 4, including an alley header from Ismail Assar that the goalkeeper pushed wide of the post. Anthony Gordon squandered a glorious chance to give England a 2-goal lead in the first half when he mishit Kyle Walker's cross from close range. Edouard Mendy made a great late save to deny England what would have been an equalizer from Bukayo Saka before Senegal added their 3rd. The match was not without controversy. England thought they had equalized through Jude Bellingham when the score was 2-1, only for their jubilation to be cut short after a lengthy VAR check. Senegal is ranked 19th in the latest FIFA ranking, only behind Morocco in the African rankings. Despite being a friendly, defeating England shows the quality Senegalese football, especially as the England fans and media, treat every game, even friendlies, as matches to be won. Former Senegal striker El Hadji Diouf was in his team's delegation to see history being made. Yes, El Hadji Diouf went to the cameras and saying, "This is for Jamie Carragher." Yes, massive victory for Senegal, massive victory for Africa. They're the first African team to defeat England in 22 games or so. Well, we can't say anything much better than Senegalese football reaching these heights, apart from Morocco in the continent now, and even that is in terms of ranking, because Morocco hasn't won the AFCON for a very long time.
Yeah, and well, speaking about England and African teams, I can fully remember, very young. I can't remember how old I was watching 1990 when Cameroon was absolutely a brilliant team, won against Argentina in its first game, reached the quarterfinals against England and lost to Gary Lineker penalties, questionable for that matter. And of course, the last World Cup defeated Senegal. They always have ways and means of defeating African teams. That is England for you. So some are saying Senegal over-celebrated, but to defeat a team of England's pedigree, to become the first African team to defeat them at their own backyard, it was celebrating. It was celebrating, although it's not a competitive game, but it's worth celebrating. And you look at Senegal's success story, it's down to hard work. The foundation stone, of course, have been laid for a long while, but if you look at their recent upsurge in football, it started with Jambat Academy when Sayer Sek partnered with, of course, Bernard Lama and Patrick Vera in order to start the academy. And then from there, a whole lot of partnerships started emanating, and then we have Generation Foot. If you look at some of these top players that played yesterday, a good number of them were developed in the Senegalese league. I think apart from Kalidou Koulibaly, Mendy, the goalkeeper, Habib Diarra, all of them were developed in the Senegalese league. And if you look at how they soared and skyrocketed in terms of going to go toe-to-toe with England, because if you look at the Senegalese team, they have nothing to envy England. Nicolas Jackson is playing in the same team with the England, but two central defenders in Choloba and Colwell. If you look at Idrissa Ganagay, he's playing for Everton. If you look at Kalidou Koulibaly was playing for Chelsea. If you look at Mendy, was playing for Chelsea, won the Champions League with them. So toe-to-toe, they can match England. And if you look at Elas Malik Diouf, the left back, what a wonderful left back, developed in the Senegalese league, now playing in Czech, in Prague. So they have nothing to envy. And this should motivate us as Gambia, because we have the same people, we have the same, of course, cultures. And talent-wise, nobody, even the Senegalese, would admit that we have more talented players than them. What do they have better than us is the structures. And starting with that is to professionalize our league. That is where we should start. But all said and done, congratulations to the Senegalese. This would give them as a motivation, but they have to keep grounded. The next target should be try to win another AFCON, but to be hosted by Morocco, who are massive favorites, is going to be extremely tough for them. But they would be one of the favorites up there again, alongside Morocco.
So be massive motivation for the Gambia. We'll now take a break, and when we come back, we'll be talking to Lamin Jara. We'll talk about the West Coast Region 3rd Division playoffs.
The art of juggling is a true spectacle of agility, coordination, and speed. A symbol of progression, precision, and mastery. "5G Speed is like having the juggler in your pocket. With lightning-fast download and upload speeds, you'll easily be able to juggle even the busiest workdays. Whether you're a busy entrepreneur, a creative, or just someone who wants to stay connected, juggle your tasks with ease with QCell 5G Speed. The future is here. It's fast, reliable, and efficient. First brought to you by QCell. We innovate, others follow.
ak mbégte pour yombal seen dundin léegi mun ngaa jënda suñu bundle data package yi yépp bàyyi ko ca Q Money wallet génna wala njëkk boo ko doon jëndee mun ngaa jënda suñu bundle data package ji doore ko 20 megabytes ba 20 gigabytes nga dal di bànneexu internet.
Welcome back and thank you for joining us. This is Qsports and I am Mamadou Gajaga. Joining me in the studio is freelance journalist Lamin Jara. Jara, we're going to talk about the West Coast Region Third Division playoffs. What is happening at the West Coast region?
Yeah, basically it's the playoff semi-finals in the West Coast Third Division. Of course, 4 teams will be battling it out, today and tomorrow. And already the preparations are underway. And today we have at 4 p.m. at the Box Bar, we're going to have Misira and then Kungu Jang Friends. And tomorrow it's the big one that everybody is talking about, and they can't just wait and they can help themselves because Sibanor and Gambianos will battle it out at the Box Bar on the 15th tomorrow.
Massive games to come and there is a lot to play for. What is at stake?
Yeah, a lot to play for, and there is a lot at stake looking at it because many will tell you West Coast is the most difficult or the hardest region in terms of the third division and in terms of getting your qualifications to the second division, and exactly that is what is at stake. I mean, between the 2 teams today and of course between the 2 teams tomorrow. Again, it's always in a league format where we have Group A and Group B, and of course in Group A we have 12 teams that will always battle it out in a league format. They play home and away matches, go to grounds where it's always tough to get points. And again in Group B also is the same thing. And at the end of the day, the top 2 in Group A and the top 2 in Group B will play against each other. That is the top team in Group A and the second team or the runners-up in Group B will have a tie to settle in the semi-final. And of course, the top team in Group B will go toe-to-toe with the second team in Group A. And looking at it, Misira and Kungu Jang Friends are meeting today because Misira topped their group, which is Group A, and Kungu Jang Friends finished second in Group B. So that is why they are meeting today. And the winner will be in the finals to wait for the winner between Gambianos and Sibanor. Then there will be a final in the next weeks to come. The winner of that final will be the champions of West Coast in terms of the third division, and of course will be the standard bearer in the second division playoffs, at least in their quest to go into the second division.
If you look at the pedigree of the teams, what teams are we talking about here? You've talked about a team from Sibanor. Gambianos, of course, started as a football academy, but do they have senior level footballers who would compete at this level?
Yeah, you look at the teams, of course, all 24 teams have those players. They have what it takes to compete at this level where we are. Again, the competition can definitely manifest, what we have seen, for the past couple of months or so. You look at the 4 teams in particular, they've just been brilliant, and I think they've justified that they have the resources, they have what it takes to go out there and of course compete even in the second division come next season. But again, it's always difficult, and all 4 teams have points to prove because you look at Misira, they will tell you we are the Alcalos of the West Coast, male third division. They've been there for 8 years, and now looking at all other 23 teams, they have spent more time than any other team. And they have this slogan that it's now or never. Last year they were there, in the semi-finals. They lost it to Balosar in the first hurdle, who were eventual winners. And again, that kind of motivated them to go all out again. One thing about them is looking at the group of players that they have and the talents that are emanating from that ward that is Misira, that has put them in pole position to present a very good team year in, year out. Because for the 3rd time running or for the 3rd year running, they are in the playoffs. And that's what they want to have. That's what they feel they no longer belong to the 3rd division. They have to go to the 2nd division, and they have what it takes, to be there. Well, for Kungu Jang Friends, this is the first time. they are into this position. They've never been there before, although they've spent some 3-4 years in the third division. But again, in the manner in which they came this year, who says they cannot win it, and who says they do not have a chance against Misira? And especially this is, to me, they are the dark horses of this season. What they have done is just remarkable. Although they have very young players, over the years we have seen some good players that have come from Kungu Jang, and they've rose through the ranks, and they are up there at almost national level, and some have traveled to go and play football elsewhere. But again, you look at what they have done this year, you will not definitely think that they've come there, they received it. To me, I think they earned it, because they are the team that has won almost every single point away from home. And we know it's difficult in West Coast, it's difficult in our grassroots football, especially when you go away. The environment is always difficult. The pitches you are not used to playing, especially in sandy pitches. The fans will come to serve as an X factor for the home side. But they've negated all that. They've gone about their own business. And in the end, in the first round, they did not win any game. But again, in the any home game, again in the second round, they came in, did not win the first 2 home games. But at the end of the day, they were able to do their homework away, and they're here. And today, they're going to the Box Bar, which is away. It's a home game for Misira. So looking by what they have done, they feel they have a chance.
And looking at in terms of support, some of them are community teams, some of them are privately owned, let's say the ones like Gambinos, but still, is there massive support? Yeah, massive support. You look at Misira. Misira in Brikama is a household name. From Nawetan level up to this level. To me, I think they are one of the highest crowd pulling teams, even in the third division. You look at their followers, it's massive. Yesterday I was at their training ground. The community came, and it was like, this is our year. So that alone tells a lot about how desperate they want to be there. They said they want to win it for their people, and they want to go out there in the second division for their people. These are teams that you feel that once they reach the second division, that will give our division another dimension and another look, because the communities will come to take ownership, and people will follow their teams, and then that is something that is good for our football. Kungu Jang friends, the same, up to the past 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks of the league format, they were like, okay, individually owned team. But again, when you are doing well, and the scripts are always written, about you and the heroics, then the community begins to take ownership. Day before yesterday, we were at Kungu Jang, then in the community, and everybody knows what is going on. And they are telling us, we want this team to be in the second division so that we can follow them. Yeah, you look at Gambinos. We were there this morning as early as 8 o'clock. We found them having their session. Yeah, they are of course, they are owned individually, and it's always difficult. But again, they do not have that crowd, that fan base. But the neutrals, because of the football they play, yeah, the brand of football,
the
beautiful.
brand of football, they touch the ball. They want to take responsibility. They want to make the opponent suffer and then beat you, and that's what they have done. That has been their game plan, and that is why tomorrow we cannot help ourselves. Painfully, tomorrow one of the best teams will not go to the final. Sibanor have just been outstanding. They have just been magnificent. There is no word to describe them. Although in terms of facility, in terms of structure, Gambinos are up there, but Sibanor are almost not very far from Gambinos in terms of what they have, because in terms of the abstract structure, the organization, and all those things are there. Fine, Gambinos have the physical pitch, they have the balls and all those things. Sibanor might not have that, but again, how they go about their business is just remarkable. The players are together, they come together, they eat together, they sleep in the same house. They do not go out anywhere. Right now, when you go to Sibanor or Buyam, that's where they come.
That's fantastic.
There. So
brilliant. So we're looking forward to the West Coast Region Third Division playoffs, the semi-finals. First is today, and tomorrow also a massive, massive game at the Brikama Box Bar. Thank you very much, and until we come your way next week, keep on sporting. Have a wonderful day. Bye.